So what is it? What is osteoporosis? So not everybody realises or knows that bone is actually a living organ, okay? So bone isn't just a thing that's in our body that, you know, is there and doesn't, you know, do anything. It's actually regenerating and rebuilding all the time. That's why when you break a bone, it can rebuild itself, it can mend, okay? So what happens with osteoporosis is that as we get older, the process of regeneration is slower than the process of degeneration, as it were. So what happens is there becomes an imbalance, and what happens then is the bone gets more porous, which is where the osteoporosis comes from. So osteo means bone, porosis, it means porous bones. So if you can imagine that because of this this sort of degeneration going on in the bone, what happens is, if you can imagine what a bone looks like, what you'd imagine it looks like as being fairly solid, as you get older, if you've got osteoporosis in particular, it becomes very porous, a bit like a flannel. You know, one of those sponges that have got loads of holes in it? Well, that's what an osteoporotic bone looks like. And it becomes much more liable to break very, very easily. So that's what happens. Now, why does it happen? When there are the few reasons why our bones do this. One of them is obviously aging. So as we get older, this process is a bit out of balance. So other things are smoking, alcohol, family history. So if you've got somebody in your family with osteoporosis, then you're more likely to get osteoporosis. Low body weight, because one of the things that actually helps you prevent getting osteoporosis is having extra weight, so weight bearing. So we're going to talk about that with Helen, weight bearing exercises. So if you're very light in your structure, then you've not got enough weight going through your skeleton. Other things are things like if you've been taking oral steroids for long periods, usually more than 3 months. If you've got a low vitamin D level in your body and a low calcium intake. So there are other things, but generally speaking, they're the things that are commonly cause osteoporosis. Now, when we become menopausal, so the dreaded estrogen, the drop in that causes a problem for our bones. So it makes this process of regeneration speed up, so that our bones are more liable to become brittle. So women are more likely to get osteoporosis than men are, though men do get it. So it's estimated that about 1 in 3 women get osteoporosis. And if we just look at a few statistics here that I've written down, so they're estimated to be about 180,000 fragility fractures per year in the UK alone. So that's a lot, isn't it? Now, what is a fragility fracture? A fragility fracture is, so for instance, if you were walking along a road and you were maybe in your 30s, you've not got osteoporosis, and you trip up and you fall, and we fall often onto our hands, you're very unlikely to break a bone. You know, mostly you'll just get up and, you know, feel a bit daft. If you've got osteoporosis, then, and you do that, then you more than likely will break your wrists, and that's what a low fragility fracture is. It's a fracture that occurs when it wouldn't normally occur. So obviously if you fall off the top of a building, you're likely to break bones, but if you fall normally, you won't usually, but with osteoporosis you will. And the bones that are most commonly affected in osteoporosis are your wrist, your spine and your hip. But there are other bones, obviously, that can be affected as well. In particular, our spines, and quite often we can get a fracture in that without doing very much at all. And you might have also seen older people with what's called a dowager's hump. So they get this like humping of the back. Well, that's when the vertebrae have sort of collapsed in on themselves, and they get this rounding and this hump, and that's more than likely caused by osteoporosis. So it's incredibly common, and like I say, it's something that not a lot of people know a lot about. So we need to do all that we can early on in our lives. It's thought that, let's have a little look at another statistics which is quite as interesting, at the age of 50, you've got about a 2% risk of having osteoporosis, but actually by the time we are 80, that risk has gone up to 50% risk of having it. So you can see that, you know, as we get older, and particularly as women going through the menopause, our risk is significantly increased. So I'm going to post in the comments when I finish this assessment tool. So it's called the Q fracture assessment tool, and it's a nice simple tool that you can go to, and you can actually put in some details. You answer a few questions. It's like a tick box about what medications you've taken, a bit about your medical history, etc., your age, what sex you are, and then it will give you a generalized risk factor of you having osteoporosis now and going forward. Now, if you do that score and your risk comes out as high, then what I suggest you do is go to your GP and request what's called a DEXA scan, DEXA. So that's a scan, and I think it used to always be done on your wrist. I'm sure it's probably the same. They look at your bone density anyway, and they can assess whether you're going to be at risk of osteoporosis going forward. And then you can make a plan with your medical practitioner to actually, you know, prevent yourself getting osteoporosis or making it any worse. You know, you can improve with medication. Often it's the case at the moment.
So what happened for me was that I was at home on a Sunday evening. I walked too fast through the house, and I did that thing which I'm sure many of us have done. I trod on the other leg of my trousers.
Yeah.
And I crashed to the floor, throw out both wrists, and both my wrists broke. But it didn't occur to me. I knew, you know, they put me forward for a DEXA scan. I was 56. Didn't occur to me that I'd have osteoporosis. I thought it was a formality. I landed really hard, you know. Yeah. Anyway, so as you said, I've been teaching and practicing yoga for a long time. And as I started doing my research, I discovered and realized that the yoga that I was doing was not weight bearing enough. There was no resistance work. And I started looking around, and I found this program, which, as you say, it's taught in some 30 countries worldwide, but it's not well known here. A few people may have heard of the Feldenkrais method. If you haven't, don't worry about it. But if you have, you know, it's one of those if you know things. Bones for Life evolved out of that. And it uses weight bearing and resistance in a way that you can work at home. You don't need special equipment. You don't have to go to the gym. You don't have to start lifting weights. Although if you do choose to do that, it's a really good support for that, because it focuses on the weight bearing and the resistance. It's very accessible. A lot of the processes you can do in a chair if you can't get down on the floor. A lot of it you're standing. There are 90 different processes, and in the introductory course that I've created, which is just 4 classes over 4 weeks, we touch on about 18 of those, and they're the fundamental things that you need to understand to be able to carry on and learn more. But they also give you enough to get out and start using this every day. There's the simplest one, the sort of thing that everybody knows when they start learning this, is a thing called bouncing on heels. And there's a lot of evidence about bouncing on your heels being good for bones.
Oh, wow.
Sends that gravitational force up through the body. Yeah. And we work really hard on making sure people understand how to get their neck and their lumbar particularly well aligned, so that when you bounce and send that force up, you're not confirming, you know, out of alignment. You're getting as best aligned as your body is able to get to.
Yes.
And I do that 3 times a day at least. I do it when I clean, you know, before I clean my teeth, before I go to bed, and usually at some point out when I'm on my daily walk. Walking every day, even if you don't do Bones for Life, walk every day. Yeah. That is the best thing. Get yourself out and walking actively. Yeah. So there's loads you can do. And yeah, I'd absolutely love any of your members who are interested. Obviously, if you'd like to sign up, that would be fantastic for this round. Otherwise, join my mailing list so you know what's happening next.
Yes.
And as Andrea said, yeah, we've got a code that I've set up, Andrea99, so I know exactly where you came from. And that will reduce the price from £111 for the 4-week course. And although it's 4 weeks, the commitment from you is literally, it's 1 class a week, which is about an hour and a quarter.
Yeah.
And each class, they're obviously, I do them live on Zoom, and it's brilliant if you can come to that. This course, the live classes are Wednesday lunchtimes. If that doesn't work for you, you can watch them on replay. And the great thing about this, unlike a yoga class where, and as a yoga teacher, you know, I'm, you know, the last thing you want is people coming in and out. This is one process, have a pause, do the next one. So if you find you struggle to spend an hour and a quarter in one go during the week, you can do one bit, come back to it another day. You can work your way through it, so you don't have to do the whole thing in one go.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So it sounds like it's suitable for sort of any age, really, and even people that have got osteoporosis could get involved with this.
Well, I have.
Yes, exactly. I'm thinking
or
about
rather, you see, I'm very careful about my language. I say I have been diagnosed with it. I actually never say I have it.
Yeah,
that's my hypnotherapy talking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's reframing it, and
absolutely,
I'm all for that. Yeah, I was thinking more like of my mum, really, who is
indeed.
Yeah.
And if somebody is unsure, if they feel that they're concerned about fragility, then I would say have a chat with me, drop me a DM, comment under the video. Obviously, I'll keep an eye on comments here. I am more than happy to have a chat with anybody who would just like to find out a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds amazing, Helen. It really does. And I think it's wonderful what you're doing. And, you know, I think we just need to spread the word, really, to more and more women who, you know, let's think 180,000 fractures in the UK alone is just so frightening, isn't it? You know, and like you, my mum, she didn't know she had osteoporosis. She fell just like you did, broke both her wrists, and then she actually broke her pelvis. And that was a hell of a year for her. That year was an awful year. She was in agony when she hadn't actually even been diagnosed with osteoporosis at that point. They didn't do the DEXA scan when she broke her wrists, which I've no idea why they didn't.
Amazing.
But they didn't anyway. Eventually, she got a diagnosis, and you know, the rest is history. But yeah, I think. And I think a lot of people don't actually know what to do. I think some people have an awareness of weight-bearing exercise, but they don't really know what that means.
And actually, so it's a good point. So walking, as I say, you know, as we've agreed, is a really, really good one because you are bearing your own weight.
Yes.
And also, as you mentioned earlier, this comes back to the fact that and this is one of my risk factors, I've always been relatively light. So my walking, you know, walking. I've, for example, I'm 20 minutes from my local town, so I quite often walk in, do a bit of shopping, and come back with a backpack full of bits and pieces.
Brilliant.
And that used to be a bit of a slog, and now I'm like, look at all this extra weight I'm bearing. This is really
bring it on, pile the weights on.
And the other thing, of course, so it's worth being aware that swimming and cycling, whilst they can be great for cardio and muscle tone, are not weight bearing. So that's something to be aware of.
Yes.
And the other thing is, even if you have already got to a point where your bones are considered fragile, first of all, we don't know 100% where the bone density, how much bone density correlates to bone strength, because the only way you can test strength is to bend something till it breaks, and that tends to be frowned upon when it comes to bones. But also, if you don't fall in the first place, you're less likely to break something, much less likely. So as well as the alignment and the weight bearing and the resistance, the program, like yoga, is also very, very good for balance and stability, and just getting you more, it's finding a new way to be in your body, getting used to how your body works in its optimum way, so that you become more confident. So when you are out walking, I mean, you know, as I say, I basically tied my feet together when moving at speed by standing on my trousers. So anyone would have crashed down. But I have numerous occasions when I stumble but I don't fall because my balance from all the years of yoga is very, very good. And so that's part of it.
Of course.
And it's getting confidence. And also when we lift, I mean, on a completely different but very related level, when we improve our alignment and we get used to sort of lifting and being more, that in itself makes us feel more confident. Because people have this, you know, if you're moving into osteoporosis, it's getting to that stooped position, and people start feeling like they're a little old lady. And actually, when you start opening up and finding you naturally improve your alignment, your posture, you look at the world in a different way.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just look more confident just even looking at people when they're stood like that, don't you? You know, and as you say, your balance is going to be much better. And as you said, if you can avoid falling, then that obviously is the first line to actually stopping yourself getting a break.
There are many, many people out there. I see, you know, I'm in a number of Facebook osteoporosis groups, and there are many people out there who've been diagnosed and have never had a fracture.
Yeah, but I hope you've enjoyed listening to this, the live today. Hope it's been, you know, it's given you a little bit more knowledge about osteoporosis so that you can take action now before, you know, anything further develops. But certainly I would recommend that you get involved with Helen and use that discount code and get the discount. So have a lovely evening. Thank you, Helen, for coming and speaking on here. That was really excellent. And, you know, we'll be speaking again in the future, of no doubt whatsoever.